Ukraine defeats Russia in Abu Dhabi talks. The Ukraine-US-Russia talks took place in Abu Dhabi in a trilateral format for the first time in years, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated during his visit to Lithuania. He said that the parties discussed the full 20-point peace plan and the number of contentious issues in the negotiations has decreased. It is Sunday, January 25, 2026. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex, joining with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, well, the absolute showdown that just happened at the Al Shadi Palace in the UAE. We're talking about the first face-to-face trilateral negotiations between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States in years.
And while the official headlines are, cautiously using words like constructive, if you actually dig into who was there and what was on the table, this was not a diplomatic get-together. This was a knife fight in a phone booth.
Absolutely. We are going to unpack this 20-point plan that Kyiv has somehow managed to wrestle into existence. And we have to talk about the terrifying anchorage formula that threatens to blow the whole thing apart.
Not to mention the sheer bifurcated reality of it all, discussing peace in a luxury palace while Russia launches the single heaviest drone barrage of the entire war against Kyiv. It's surreal.
It is. We've got spies leading delegations, a secret deal allegedly cooked up in Alaska between Putin and Trump, and a U.S. government landlord sitting at the peace table.
And that landlord detail, the guy from the GSA, that's actually the key to understanding the whole money side of this, but we'll get there.
Okay, so let's start with the room itself, the Al Shadi Palace. We've seen bilateral talks before, but they're usually, lower level things in Qatar, Turkey. This trilateral format feels significantly heavier.
It is heavier. It feels like the end game because the proxies are gone. For the last, 2 years, it's been intermediaries passing notes. This was direct.
Chase to faith. But look at who is actually sitting in the chairs. Normally, a peace summit is for foreign ministers. People in nice suits who specialize in polite euphemisms.
Right, but the manifest for this one, the diplomatic corps, was basically missing in action. For Ukraine, you had Rustem Umerov, their defense minister, and Kirilo Budnov, the intel chief.
These are not diplomats. These are the guys plotting kinetic strikes and sabotage operations.
And the Russian side was even more, telling. No Lavrov, no career diplomats.
Yeah.
The delegation was led by Admiral Igor Kostyukov,
the head of the GRU.
Their military intelligence.
Exactly. I mean, to put that in perspective for you, that's like the U.S. sending the head of the CIA's paramilitary division to negotiate a trade deal. Kostyukov is a hardliner's hardliner.
So what does that signal?
It signals that for Moscow, this isn't a political problem to be solved through dialogue. It's a military equation. It's about territory. It's about control. They sent a warfighter to end a war.
It definitely strips away the pretense, doesn't it? They're not there to talk about historical brotherhood. They're there to draw lines on a map. But then you look at the American side, and it gets even stranger.
Okay, yeah. So you've got the expected Trump envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. That's pretty standard for this administration. But the name that just jumped out at me was Josh Gruenbaum.
The GSA guy.
The GSA guy. The General Services Administration. For anyone who doesn't follow the, let's say, the boring side of U.S. bureaucracy, the GSA is basically the government's landlord. They buy office supplies, they manage federal buildings. So why is a procurement specialist sitting at the most dangerous table in geopolitics?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gruenbaum isn't there to buy staplers. He has a background in private equity. His presence, combined with the language in the prosperity package, part of the peace plan, it suggests a massive paradigm shift.
A shift now.
The U.S. isn't viewing Ukrainian reconstruction as foreign aid anymore. They're viewing it as a distressed asset opportunity.
Wow. So they're treating the rebuilding of an entire nation like a corporate turnaround, a leveraged buyout of a country.
In a way, yes. The logic seems to be, if you can weave Western private equity and massive infrastructure projects into the actual soil of Ukraine, you create a kind of financial shield. You make the country too profitable to fail.
So if BlackRock and the U.S. government effectively own the energy grid, Russia can't bomb it without attacking Wall Street directly.
That's the theory, and it explains the prosperity package title. It's a carrot for Zelenskyy for sure, but it's also a profit motive for the West to stay engaged.
But I mean, let's be real. Money doesn't stop tanks. We have to address the headline we started with. Zelenskyy is calling this a defeat for Russia. Now, considering Russian troops are still occupying nearly 20% of Ukraine, that sounds like pretty aggressive spin.
It does sound like spin, until you compare Russia's original war aims with what's actually on paper in this 20-point plan. Remember, Putin's goal wasn't just land. It was the complete demilitarization of Ukraine.
He wanted a neutral vassal state, a bigger Belarus.
Precisely. But this framework, which Zelenskyy says is 90% agreed, it does the exact opposite. And the biggest takeaway here, the most important part, is the security architecture.
The reports are calling them Article 5 style guarantees. We should be careful with that language, though. Ukraine has been burned before by things like the Budapest Memorandum.
And that's the skeptical question everyone should be asking.
Yeah.
But the difference is in the wording and the signatories. Budapest was about assurances, which is basically, we'll complain if someone hurts you. These new protocols are guarantees.
So an attack on one is an attack on all.
Effectively, yes. Sources close to the talks, even NATO Secretary General, say the language mirrors Article 5 almost word for word. But here's the clever part, and this is why it's such a brilliant move by Kyiv.
What's that?
It's not a NATO treaty.
Which means they don't need a unanimous vote.
Exactly. No unanimous consent from all 32 members. No single country, like Hungary, can veto Ukraine's protection. This new deal is a pact with a coalition of the willing. The US, UK, France, the Nordics.
That is a crucial diplomatic hack. It's a NATO-grade shield without the NATO bureaucracy getting in the way.
And when you combine that with the other big win, Ukraine keeping a peacetime army of 800,000 personnel, you see why Zelenskyy is calling it a Russian defeat.
800,000, that's a staggering number. That's larger than the active duty forces of France, Germany, and the UK combined.
It turns Ukraine into a fortress. Russia wanted a demilitarized zone. Instead, they're getting a heavily armed, Western integrated porcupine on their border that's backed by US nuclear powers. For the Kremlin, that is a strategic nightmare.
So the soul of Ukraine, its sovereignty, its military, that's the 90% that's agreed. But now we have to talk about the 10% that isn't, the soil. And this is where the Anchorage formula comes in.
Right, the Anchorage formula. It sounds like something from a spy novel, but it dates back to that Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, August of 2025.
And what is it exactly? It's a demand for new territorial realities, right?
It's actually more aggressive than that. The formula demands that Ukraine withdraw from the entirety of the Donbas region, Donetsk and Luhansk.
Wait, hold on. We need to be clear here. Ukraine still holds key cities and fortifications in Donetsk, places they've been defending since 2014.
Correct. They control about 20% of the region. These are heavily fortified logistics hubs, places like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. The Russian demand is, hand it all over. Withdraw your troops from land we haven't conquered, and we'll freeze the lines in the south.
That's insane. A voluntary retreat. That sounds like a political suicide pill for any Ukrainian leader.
Thanks for fighting and dying. Now please pack up and leave.
It's an impossible sell. Zelenskyy was unequivocal. He called it the land of our nation. And there's a constitutional trap, too. You can't just give away territory without a referendum, but you can't hold a vote under martial law.
So it's a deadlock.
A total deadlock. Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, flat out said there's no hope of the deal without the Anchorage terms. They are betting the West will pressure Zelenskyy to fold just to stop the bleeding. Which brings us to the bleeding part. Because while these guys were in air-conditioned luxury in Abu Dhabi, the reality on the ground was just horrific.
It's what we call coercive diplomacy. While the diplomats eat lunch, the generals launch the kitchen sink, 375 drones and 21 missiles in a single night.
375, that number. I mean, even with great air defense, that is a saturation attack designed to overwhelm the grid.
And it did. 1.2 million people lost power and heat in January. We're talking sub-zero temperatures. This wasn't a military strike, it was a terror tactic, plain and simple.
It's a message sent straight to the delegation in Abu Dhabi. Sign our deal, or your people freeze.
But here's the thing, it didn't work. If anything, it hardened their position. The Ukrainian foreign minister released a statement during the attack saying, Putin's place is not at the board of peace, but in the dock of the special tribunal.
That resilience is something Moscow just constantly seems to miscalculate. They assume pain leads to submission.
But in this conflict, pain has always led to rage. And the Ukrainian delegation knows they can't capitulate on the Anchorage formula and survive politically. So they're holding firm.
Okay, so we have this immovable object in the Donbas, but momentum on the other points. And they're meeting again on February 1st. That is just days away. What else is left to resolve besides the map?
The other ticking time bomb is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
The largest in Europe, still occupied by Russian troops.
Still occupied and reportedly mined. The U.S. proposal is for a trilateral control mechanism. U.S., Russia, and Ukraine managing the plant together.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster. Asking Ukrainian engineers to work alongside the military that held them hostage.
Kyiv hates the idea. They want U.S.-Ukraine control only. They just don't trust the Russians not to use the plant as leverage later. It's a massive sticking point because nuclear safety concerns the whole continent.
And then there's the implementation itself. We keep hearing about this Board of Peace. Who actually manages the $800 billion?
This is where the Trump influence is clearest. The proposal creates a peace council. It's not a UN committee. It would have people like Tony Blair, Marco Rubio, and Trump himself as the chair.
So less like a diplomatic mission and more like a corporate board of directors.
That is the exact analogy. They want to move away from the slow, bureaucratic UN process and towards a more executive, conflict management style.
And the money for that, the capital, is coming from a very controversial source.
$250 billion of it is slated to come from frozen Russian assets. The U.S. wants to use 50% of the profits from those assets to fund reconstruction. Moscow is obviously furious. They see it as theft. The West sees it as a down payment on reparations.
It really is a fascinating pivot. Instead of just offering protection, the West is offering a complete transformation. It's the South Korea model, isn't it?
That's the golden bridge they're building for Zelenskyy. The question is, can he walk across it? Can he tell a mother in Kyiv, we gave up Donetsk, but look, we have a booming tech sector funded by the EU? It's a rational trade-off on paper, but an emotional minefield in reality.
Especially when the giving up part means abandoning your own people to Russian occupation. That is the Anchorage trap.
And that's why February 1st is so critical. If they can find some creative solution for the Donbass, the deal works. If Russia insists on surrender of territory, the talks collapse. But let's be clear. Ukraine has already won the strategic argument. They have globalized their defense. They are not alone anymore.
You know, it really feels like we are watching the invention of a new kind of geopolitics. You've got spies leading talks, private equity managing reconstruction, and a board of directors overseeing the peace.
It's the privatization of peace. It's high risk, for sure. But considering the UN has been paralyzed for years, it might be the only mechanism left that actually has teeth.
Before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with a thought on that exact point. We are seeing a real shift here. Traditional diplomacy. Well, it's being sidelined for what looks like a private equity takeover of conflict resolution. You have Trump, Kushner, Blair. It's a boardroom, not a situation room. Is this the future? Are we moving from United Nations to Conflict Management LLC? It's something to watch because if it works here, it's going to be the blueprint for everything else.
It's a bold experiment. And, for the people of Ukraine, shivering in the dark, but dreaming of the EU, they don't care what you call it, board, council, or LLC, as long as it stops the drones and keeps their freedom intact.
We will be watching February 1st very, very closely. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex Anaria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.